"They want to hurt my mother. She's sick." The cowboy silenced the entire town. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. When Marcus Devereaux walked through that saloon door at noon, with the sun creating a dark silhouette of his lean body, each syllable that left his mouth carried the weight of both a promise and a threat. The 5 men at the corner table stopped laughing. The piano player forgot the next note. Even the dog sleeping near the fireplace lifted its head. Nobody expected to see him there. Marcus had left 3 years ago, promising never to return to Dust Creek. But here he was, road dust on his clothes, unshaven, and with that look that anyone who has ever loved someone deeply would instantly recognize, the expression of someone who has nothing left to lose except the person they love. And that made him the most dangerous man in that room. Dust Creek was one of those towns that appear on maps more out of stubbornness than importance. 53 families, 1 church, 2 saloons, and a disproportionate amount of secrets. Have you ever lived in a place where everyone knows your name, but nobody really knows you? Eleanor Devereaux arrived there 28 years earlier, 7 months pregnant, without a husband and without excuses. She didn't ask for charity, didn't invent stories about a heroically deceased spouse. She simply rented the small room in the back of Mr. Patterson's grocery store and started working. She washed clothes, ironed, cooked for whoever would pay. The town's women looked at her sideways in church. The men tipped their hats respectfully when they passed her on the street, but their wives made a point of crossing to the other side. You know how it is when people treat you well to your face, but you feel something's wrong behind your back? Marcus was born in that tiny room. Eleanor sewed by candlelight while he slept in a box lined with clean rags. She never complained, never cried in front of him, but Marcus remembers waking at night and hearing her sob quietly, thinking he was asleep. How many tears did our mothers shed that we never saw? The years passed. Marcus grew strong, helping in the stables, carrying grain sacks, doing any work that paid a few cents. Eleanor saved every coin as if it were gold. When Marcus turned 15, she had enough money to buy a simple little house at the town's entrance. Nothing luxurious, but it was theirs. The town accepted Eleanor gradually, not with love, but with that tired tolerance that small communities eventually develop. She was too good to be ignored forever. When typhoid fever hit Dust Creek in 1881, it was Eleanor who cared for the sick without fear. It was she who stayed awake 3 nights straight beside little Sarah Mitchell, the banker's daughter, until the fever broke. But gratitude has a short memory in places where pride is worth more than gold. Marcus learned this the hard way. At 16, he fell in love with Catherine Thornton, the local judge's daughter. The love was mutual, obvious to anyone with eyes. They met secretly near the creek, made plans for the future, daydreamed together, until the day Judge Thornton found out. Marcus will never forget that afternoon. The judge showed up at their house with 3 men. They didn't knock, simply walked in. "My son," said Eleanor, placing herself between the men. "And Marcus, anyone who enters without invitation is not welcome in his house. Have you ever seen your mother transform into a lioness right before your eyes?" Judge Thornton laughed, a cold, calculated sound. "This isn't a house, Eleanor. It's a disgrace. And your bastard will learn to stay away from my daughter, or I'll remind you why this town gave you shelter out of pity, not respect." His words were poison. He knew exactly where to press to cause maximum pain. Marcus stepped forward, fists clenched. Eleanor grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Don't," she whispered. "It's not worth it." But was it? Marcus wondered this for 3 years. Are there moments when fighting is the only answer, even when winning seems impossible? That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the cracked ceiling of his room, listening to the wind rattle the poorly fitted window. Anger burned in his chest like live coals. Not anger at being poor, not anger at being the son of a single mother, but anger at seeing his mother humiliated after everything she had done. Have you ever felt that helplessness of wanting to protect someone you love, but having no power to do so? Before dawn, Marcus packed his bag. He didn't have much. 2 changes of clothes, the Bible Eleanor received from the priest when he was born, and a faded photograph of her as a young woman. He left a short letter on the kitchen table. "Mother, I need to make something of myself. I need to be someone you can be proud of. I'll return when I'm worthy of you. With love, Marcus." Eleanor found the letter when she got up to make coffee. She didn't cry, didn't run after him, simply folded the paper carefully, tucked it in her apron pocket, and continued her routine. But something in her died that day, something that never fully returned. What's it like to carry the weight of being the reason someone we love left? Marcus traveled west. He worked on ranches, in mines, even as convoy security. He learned to shoot well, learned to fight better, learned that the world was even bigger and crueler than Dust Creek. But he also learned there were places where his past didn't matter, where the sweat of his work was worth more than his family name. He sent money when he could, small amounts at first, then more as he prospered. He never returned, not from lack of love, but because pride is a prison we build with our own hands. He told himself he'd return when he was rich, when he had proof that Eleanor hadn't raised a failure. How many times do we postpone what really matters, waiting for the right moment? Eleanor kept every dollar Marcus sent in a cookie tin under the bed. She didn't spend it. She continued washing clothes, ironing, living on the minimum. People asked if she had news from her son. "He's doing well," she'd answer simply. "Working hard." She didn't tell them about the money, didn't tell them that with each letter she held the paper against her chest before reading, as if she could feel her son's touch through the words. The illness started subtly, a persistent cough that Eleanor ignored. "It's just the dust," she'd say when someone asked. But the cough worsened. Came the fever, the weakness. Dr. Morrison, the only doctor within 50 miles, examined her and shook his head sadly. "Tuberculosis, Eleanor. I'm sorry." Tuberculosis in 1884 was a death sentence in places like Dust Creek. There was no cure, only symptom management and the inevitable wait. Dr. Morrison prescribed rest and fresh air. "And you need to eat well, strengthen the body." Eleanor nodded, knowing she barely had money for firewood. How do you eat well when every penny is counted 3 times? News spread through town, as it always does in small places. Some women brought soups in the first few days. But tuberculosis was frightening. It was contagious. Visits became scarce. Eleanor found herself increasingly alone in that little house, coughing blood into a handkerchief she washed and reused because she couldn't buy more. It was young Sarah Mitchell, the one Eleanor had saved years before, who broke the collective silence. She showed up one afternoon with a basket of food. "My father told me not to come," Sarah confessed, "but I owe you my life. I won't abandon you now." Doesn't true goodness always require courage to defy what others think? Sarah began visiting Eleanor regularly. She brought food, changed the sheets, read aloud to distract Eleanor from the pain. During these visits, Sarah discovered things nobody else knew. She discovered the cookie tin full of money Marcus sent, discovered that Eleanor hadn't touched a single cent, and discovered something far more sinister. One afternoon, when Eleanor was sleeping, Sarah heard loud voices outside. Through the window, she saw 3 men arguing in the small front garden. She recognized 2 of them, Wallace Creek, the land speculator, and his enforcer, a brutal fellow named Pike. The third, she didn't know. Have you ever had that premonition that you're about to discover something terrible? Sarah hid behind the door and listened. "The old woman won't last much longer," Wallace Creek was saying. "When she dies, this property goes to auction for medical debts. Nobody will bid. We buy it for nothing and have direct access to the creek." The enforcer Pike laughed maliciously. "And if she takes too long to die?" Creek responded coldly. "Tuberculosis is treacherous. Sometimes it worsens suddenly when a person doesn't have resources for proper treatment. Sarah's blood ran cold. They were planning to ensure Eleanor didn't receive treatment. Worse, they were planning to make it look like a natural progression of the disease. She waited for the men to leave and then ran to Eleanor. "Mrs. Devereux, I need to tell you something important." Eleanor listened to everything in silence. When Sarah finished, she didn't seem surprised. "I always knew this land was valuable," she said calmly. "The creek never runs dry, even in summer. Whoever controls the water controls the town." She coughed, wiped blood from the corner of her mouth. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me. You need to send a telegram to Marcus." Sarah was confused. "But you don't want him to know you're sick. You've said that several times." Eleanor smiled sadly. "I don't want him to come out of pity. But he needs to know his mother is in danger. There's a difference between protecting someone from worry and allowing evil people to do evil things because we're alone." The telegram was brief. "Your mother's sick. Men want to steal property. She needs you. Come quickly. Sarah Mitchell." 3 days later, in Carson City, Marcus received the telegram. He read it once, twice, 3 times. His hands trembled. How much time do we waste on foolish pride when the people we love need us? Marcus didn't pack. He simply took his horse, his Winchester, and the money he'd saved over the last 3 years. He rode day and night, stopping only to rest the horse. With each mile, guilt grew. He should have returned earlier, should have brought Eleanor to live with him, should have done so many things differently. On the 3rd night, camped under the stars, Marcus made a decision. He wouldn't return as the prodigal son begging forgiveness. He'd return as the man his mother deserved him to be. A man who protects those he loves, a man who doesn't back down from bullies, no matter who they are. Have you ever had that moment of absolute clarity about what you need to do? He arrived in Dust Creek at noon on the 6th day. The town was exactly as he remembered, only smaller. It's funny how places from our childhood shrink when we grow up, isn't it? Marcus didn't go straight home. First, he went to the saloon, because he knew Wallace Creek did business there every afternoon. And that's how he walked through that door, interrupting the laughter and drinks, and said those 9 words that froze time. "They want to hurt my mother. She's sick." Wallace Creek was a man accustomed to intimidation. He'd built his fortune through dubious contracts and veiled threats. He looked at Marcus with disdain, trying to maintain composure. "Boy, I don't know what you're talking about. Your mother is sick, yes, and it's a shame. But nobody's trying to hurt her." Marcus walked slowly to the table where Creek and his men sat, each step deliberate, measured. The saloon was so quiet you could hear the boards creaking under his boots. "My name is Marcus Devereux. I'm no longer that boy you ran out of here 3 years ago, and I've come to make something very clear." He placed his hands on the table, leaning forward. His eyes pierced Creek like bullets. "If my mother suddenly worsens, if she doesn't receive the treatment she needs, if something happens to her property, I won't go to the law, won't go to the judge. I'll come for each of you, and I won't be polite. Have you ever seen someone make a promise they knew they'd keep no matter the cost?" Pike, the enforcer, started to stand. Marcus didn't even look at him. "Sit down," he said simply, and there was such command in his voice that Pike sat automatically. Creek tried to laugh, but the sound came out forced. "Are you threatening me, boy, in front of witnesses?" "It's not a threat," Marcus responded calmly. "It's information, just like you gave information when you discussed outside my mother's house thinking nobody would hear. Sarah Mitchell has good hearing, and I have a good memory." Creek's face lost color. So Sarah had told. The plan was exposed. Marcus continued, "But I came here to do more than warn you. I came to make a proposal. My mother needs proper treatment, needs the best doctor money can buy, needs medicines, nutritious food, comfort. I'll pay for all of it, but I need this town's cooperation." He turned to the other men in the saloon. How many of you did my mother help? How many had clothes washed by her when you didn't have a place to fall dead? How many did she care for when you were sick? I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking you to remember who Eleanor Devereux is, a woman who deserves to die in peace, in her home, without being hunted by vultures. A man in the corner stood up. It was old Patterson, owner of the grocery store where Eleanor lived when she arrived. "Your boy," he said, voice choked. "Your mother is one of the most dignified people I've met. You can count on me for whatever you need." One by one, other men in the saloon stood up, some nodding, others murmuring support. How often do we underestimate the power of simply asking for help to do what's right? Creek realized he was losing. Without the town's complicit silence, his plan crumbled. He stood abruptly. "This isn't over, Devereux." Marcus smiled for the first time, but it was a smile without joy. "You're right. It's not over. Because I'm staying. I'm going to take care of my mother, and I'll be watching every move you make." Marcus left the saloon and went straight to Eleanor's house. When he opened the door to that small, simple place, he saw his mother in bed, much thinner and frailer than he remembered. She was sleeping. Sarah was sitting beside her, reading. She looked at Marcus and smiled with relief. "Thank goodness you came." Marcus knelt beside the bed. He took Eleanor's hand carefully, as if she might break. She opened her eyes slowly. It took a moment to focus, then recognition shone in her face. "Marcus?" Her voice was a hoarse whisper. "My son." "I'm here, Mother," he said, and for the first time in 3 years he cried. "I'm sorry it took so long. I'm so sorry." Eleanor squeezed his hand with what strength she still had. "There's nothing to be sorry for. You came, that's all that matters." And there, in that small room, the real battle began. Not of weapons, but of love against hatred. The following days were transformative. Marcus used all the money he'd saved to bring a specialist doctor from San Francisco. Dr. Chen arrived with bags full of modern medicines and new treatments. "I can't promise a cure," he said honestly, "but I can promise dignity and comfort." Eleanor's little house was transformed. Marcus renovated everything. New windows for proper ventilation, a proper stove, a comfortable bed. He hired a nurse to help with care. But the most impressive thing was how the town responded. Have you ever seen a community redeem itself through concrete actions? The women who once looked sideways began showing up with broths, breads, blankets. The men repaired the roof without charging. The church organized a weekly food basket. Even Judge Thornton appeared, bringing Catherine, the young woman now 23, looked at Marcus with that love that never really dies. "Forgive my father," she said simply, "and forgive me for not being brave 3 years ago." Marcus looked at Eleanor, who was watching everything from the window. She nodded slightly. "There's nothing to forgive," Marcus replied. "We all do the best we can with what we know at the time." Eleanor didn't miraculously improve. Tuberculosis doesn't work that way, but for the first time in months, she wasn't suffering. She had her medicines, had nutritious food, had affection, and most importantly, had her son by her side. "Marcus," she said one night, "you need to promise me something." "Anything, Mother." Eleanor looked at him with those eyes that had seen so much. "When I'm gone, don't carry anger. This town was wrong, yes, but it's also trying to make things right. Let love win. Promise?" "What final lesson would you leave for the people you love?" Wallace Creek and his men tried one more time. One night, Pike showed up drunk on the property, shouting threats. Marcus didn't need to do anything. 5 men from town emerged from the shadows. "Go away, Pike," said old Patterson, holding a shotgun. "There's no place for that here." Pike retreated. Creek understood the message. He sold his properties and left Dust Creek 2 weeks later. Sometimes evil gives up when it realizes there's no fertile ground to grow. The town that once sustained his cruelty with silence now actively rejected it. Eleanor lived 4 more months. They weren't months of agony, but of peace. She watched the sunrise and sunset, heard Marcus play guitar on the porch, received visits from people who finally expressed the gratitude they'd always felt. Sarah read to her every afternoon. Catherine came with flowers from the garden. In the last week, Eleanor called Marcus. "You know what makes me happiest. It's not that my coming here pregnant and alone became this beautiful story. It's that you learned something many men never learn, that true strength is protecting, not dominating. It's lifting up, not tearing down." She passed away on a quiet morning, with Marcus holding her hand. The funeral was the largest Dust Creek had ever seen, not because she was rich or powerful, but because she was loved. And that difference changes everything. Do you know the difference between being admired and being loved? Marcus never left Dust Creek after that. He transformed the property into a small ranch and eventually married Catherine. They had 3 children, and Marcus told Eleanor's story to each of them, not as a tragedy, but as a testament to strength, dignity, and love. The little house where Eleanor lived her last days was preserved, and to this day people visit to remember that heroism comes in many forms. The town changed too. Dust Creek became known not for its frontier roughness, but for its welcoming community. People learned that the true character of a place isn't defined by its best moments, but by how it responds when it makes mistakes. And Dust Creek responded by choosing love over fear, compassion over judgment. And you? Do you have a story about someone who defended those they loved against all odds? Someone who showed that family isn't about perfection, but about presence? Share in the comments, because stories like this don't just exist to move us, they remind us to act, not to wait for the perfect moment, to protect those we love now while there's still time. After all, tomorrow might be too late. So, who do you need to protect today? What action are you postponing that you shouldn't?